Good evening, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to the sanctuary at Ahavat Shalom. It's a pleasure to be back after last Friday's hiatus. I'm Rabbi Matt Berger. Joining us on the bima today, Michelle Koenigsberg, and down on the piano, Joy Katzen-Guthrie. It's a pleasure to have all of you with us here in person. And also for those of you who are joining us back at home. Let's begin with Nigun. It's a classic, Bim Bam Shabbat Shalom. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat 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 Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat 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 Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat 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 Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat 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 Shalom. We'll get into the spirit of lighting the Shabbat candles by singing Light These Lights.
Oh, hear my prayer, I sing to you. Be gracious to the ones I love, and bless them with goodness and mercy and peace. Oh, hear my prayer to you. Let us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen. Let us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen.
You'll find the blessing for the candles on page 2 in your prayer books.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Blessed are you, God, who hallows us with mitzvot, sacred obligations, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat. I'd like to share with you a poem on the Shema. That's the prayer that's found in this week's Torah portion by Elizabeth Topper, who originally was from England and made Aliyah and lives in Jerusalem, made Aliyah in 1982. She says, "Listen, Israel, our God Elohim is one. Elohim is the God of infinite cycles, of genesis, growth, senescence, decay, of life's wondrous design and all of its variations. Adonai is the God of endless redemption, the drive towards progress, the impulse for change, the call that cries out to attend to the world. Can we marry what is with what could yet be? Can we hear these two voices and meld them together as one?" Turning now to page 14 in your prayer books, you'll find the words to Psalm 97, "Light is sown for the righteous, radiance for the upright," or Zaruah. Or Zaruah, la tzadiku Yishrei lev simcha. Or Zaruah, la tzadiku Yishrei lev simcha. Tzadikim b'Adonai, b'Adonai, v'hodu lezecher kodsho, lezecher kodsho. Or Zaruah, la tzadiku Yishrei lev simcha. Or Zaruah, la tzadiku Yishrei lev simcha. Peace be to you, messengers of the Most High, the words of Shalom Aleichem that you can find on page 24.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Huni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch
You'll find the words to the half Kaddish words of praise on page 26.
Yitkada v'yitkada shemei Rabba V'yalma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayed chol beit Yisrael Bagala uvizman kariv V'yimiru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevarach Le'alam U'almei Almaya Yitbarach Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yithaleh V'yitalal Shemei Dekudesha Brichu Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata Tushbichata v'nechemata Tahamiran b'alma v'yamiru Amen.
Rise now for Shabbat and its blessings. Begins with the call to prayer, page 28. Yai lai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai. Baruchu et Adonai Hamevorach. Baruchu et Adonai Hamevorach. Baruch Adonai Amvorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai Amvorach Leolam Va'ed. Yai lai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai. Let's continue on page 31, prayer for the evening, Ma'ariv. Praise are you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai Hama'ariv Aravim. Please join me on 33. Words of love, Ahavat Olam. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token than this holiest of your works in the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael. We'll sing Open Up Our Eyes before saying God is one.
Open up our eyes, teach us how to live. Fill our hearts with joy and all the love love you have to give. Gather us in peace as you lead us to your name, and we will know that you are one. We will know that you are one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. 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 Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Feel free to be seated. You'll find the words of the Ahafta, the continuation of the Shema, on page 36. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha uv'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavcha Hayom alevavecha, vishinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shiftecha bevetecha, uvlechtecha v'derech, uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha, ukshartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot beineinecha, uktavtam, Al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru vasitem ekol mitzvotai vitem gedoshim leloechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem lelohim Ani Adonai Elohechem. Please join me in a reading also found on page 39, words of truth and faith, emet ve'emunah. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we are taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it's eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. Who is like you, God? Mi chamocha, our song of freedom on page 40. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai Mi kamocha nedar bakodesh. Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi kamocha nedar bakodesh. Norati lo o sefele. Norati lo o sefele. Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi kamocha nedar bakodesh. Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi kamocha nedar bakodesh. Norati lo o sefele. Norati lo o sefele. Thus it is said, Adonai redeemed Jacob from a hand stronger than his own. Praised are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. Let's continue singing the words of Hashkivenu, our prayer of shelter and protection, page 42. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim.
Ushmor seitenu uvoenu lechaim ushalom le'ata ve'ad olam.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu
Adonai Eloheinu leshalom.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom
v'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim. V'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Hamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Let's now turn to our standing prayers, the tefillah. As we rise, turning to page 46, singing Adonai, open our lips.
Adonai, sifatai tiftach ufia ki tehilatecha. Eternal God, open my lips that my mouth may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Avotenu v'Yomotenu, Eloheinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagabor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'koneh hakol, v'zocher chasdei avot v'imahot, u'mevii gula livnei v'nehem, leman shemo v'ahava, melech ozer u'moshia u'magen. Baruch atah Adonai, magen Avraham, v'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor leolam Adonai, mechaye hakol, atah rav leoshia, morid hatal, mechalkel chayim bechesed, mechaye hakol berachamim rabim, somech noflim v'rofeh cholim, umatir asurim, Kayem emunato li shenei afar. Micha mocha ba'al givurot umido melach melech memit umechaye umatzmiach Yeshua. V'ne'eman atah l'chayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai mechaye hakol.
Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh u'kadoshim b'chol yom yalucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. Feel free to be seated. We'll continue with the three blessings, the etzmaot, those in the middle. The first being Kiddushat Hayom for the holiness of Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. And for words of avodah, prayer. Baruch atah Adonai Hamachazir Shechinato L'Tzion. And for gratitude. Baruch atah Adonai hatov shimcha u'hana'eh lechodot. And the final blessing of the tefillah for Shabbat is always about peace, about shalom. You'll find this on page 60. Grant abundant peace to Israel, your people forever, for you're the sovereign God of all peace. May it be pleasing to you to bless your people Israel in every season and moment with your peace. Blessed are you, Adonai, who blesses your people Israel with peace. Baruch atah Adonai hamvorech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. Now let's sing a song of peace, so say shalom. You'll find it on the screen behind me, also on page 62. Oh, say shalom b'romah, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oh, say shalom b'romah, Yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael v'imeru amen. Oh, yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen. We'll turn now to words of healing. On page 253, you'll find the words to Mi Sheberach, God who blesses those who are in need of strength and healing. On this Shabbat, we think of the following individuals. For healing, Charlie Burke, Marcy Bunn, Lisa Cargile, Charlotte Cohen, Harav Hillel Meir Leib, Carol Curtis, Eddie Deerfield, Edie Ekber, Evelyn Edelman, Heather Felser, Harry Fleisch, Denise Freifeld, Mitchell Freifeld, Leah Gottlieb, Don Hirschman, Nan James, Arthur Maller, Ray Mancari, Arnold Miller, William Miller, Stephanie Ross, Mary Helen Schumann-Groh, and Jeff Stark. If there are any other names that you'd like to add now, either aloud or in your heart, feel free.
Mi sheberach avoteinu mikor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mikor habracha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shleima, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
I know a little tale. It's not quite proper, but it's amusing. If you like, I'll tell it to you. So begins the story told by Pesha Rivasher. She was a Russian Jew born in 1864, and she learned this story from her mom. Once upon a time, there was a husband and wife, very poor folk. To make it worse, they all had many children, none of them boys. As it happened, the wife became pregnant again, and her husband thought, who knows, maybe God will send us a boy this time around, but I haven't even got the wherewithal to pay for the circumcision feast. So he concluded it would be better if he went out into the world and begged for alms, so he'd have enough money to pay for the circumcision feast in the event it was a boy. So that's what he did. And it wasn't long before his family lost all track of him. Meanwhile, his wife came to her time, and with God's help, delivered a boy. But her house was very cold, this being Russia, and she had nothing to heat it with. Lying in bed, she remembered that there were a few pieces of coal somewhere hiding in the attic. So she asked her daughters to bring some of it down. But when they were up there, they noticed there was something bright and gleaming among these scraps of coal. And they ran down to tell their mother. "Well," she said, "bring me a couple pieces of whatever it is that's glittering up there in the attic." So they fetched down 2 pieces of the bright stone. And when their mother saw what she had, she knew at once it was something very valuable. So she said to her eldest daughter, "Carry one of these to the goldsmith and ask him what it's worth." The goldsmith took one look at this glittering stone. He knew it wasn't ordinary at all, but actually it was an uncut diamond. He bought it from the girl for a decent sum of money, which she took home to her mother. And it wasn't long before there were all sorts of good things in the house, and more than enough money to pay for a fine circumcision feast. Now that she was prosperous and rich, the woman felt it wasn't suitable to keep living in her village. So she and her daughters moved to a large town where they purchased a fine house. And soon she became known for her charitable gifts to the poor. Now all sorts of people came from all over the world to visit her, drawn by her reputation for goodness and generosity. And among those who came was her own husband, who was still trying to gather enough money for that potential circumcision feast. The woman recognized him at once, but he didn't recognize her because she was dressed so finely. Her appearance had changed with the prosperity. So she handed him a substantial sum of money. And when he saw it, he stood amazed. The woman said, "Don't be so surprised, sir. Just take this and buy yourself some very nice clothes, and then come back to the house and celebrate Shabbat with us." So that's what he did. When he returned on Shabbat evening, she welcomed him, seated him at the head of the table, and asked him to bless the wine, to do the kiddush. Her children looked on, wondering, but they said nothing. When the stranger finished the blessing of the wine, the woman served him 2 large pieces of fish. It was peppered well, it was salted well, along with a lot of other fine dishes. And the poor man downed everything as if he hadn't eaten in a number of days. When the meal was over, she showed him to a room where he could spend the night. Then she made up her own bed, and she went to sleep. But in the middle of the night, this poor man woke up, and he was super thirsty. So he left the room in the dark, searching the house for water. The woman heard this and called out to him, "Sir, what are you looking for?" He replied, "I need something to drink. I'm thirsty." "Come here," she said. "I'll give you something to drink." So he went into her room where she poured a nice glass of wine and handed it to him. He drank it, and he smacked his lips. And he said, "That's a mighty tasty glass of wine. What is it?" She replied, "This is a very special wine, and you are mine, and I am thine." And in the morning, she told her children, "This is your father." I share this story with you because the topic of my talk this evening is love, which is called ahava in Hebrew. Love is universal. And I always think it's good to share some of the Yiddish stories, the folk tales, and their wisdom as a way to make our way into our topic. So this evening, Jewish communities around the world, they're experiencing a conflict of not 1, not 2, but 3 different events. I would call it a trifecta. So first, this is a special Shabbat, and it's called Shabbat Nachamu, which means the Shabbat of consolation or the Shabbat of comfort. It's the first Shabbat that follows Tisha B'Av every single year, which is a somber holiday which commemorates the destruction of the first and second temples in Jerusalem. It's named Shabbat Nachamu because of the opening words in the Haftorah found in the book of Isaiah, which are uplifting and quite hopeful. They tell us that God still loves and comforts us, especially when we're facing challenging times. And for sure, the pandemic brings us so many challenging things. Second, this week's Torah portion is Ve'et Hanan, which means, and I, Moses, pleaded, and they contain the cherished words of the Shema and the V'ahavta, probably the most important prayer in the service. We remind ourselves of the obligation to love God with all of our heart, with all of our soul, and with all of our might. And finally, many people this weekend celebrate what's called Tu B'Av. It's a holiday of love, but it's a little bit different from Valentine's Day, because Valentine's Day celebrates love that you already have, whereas Tu B'Av, or the 15th day of the Hebrew month of Av, celebrates the possibility of finding love, which makes it somewhat unique. The rabbis of old loved this holiday, Tu B'Av, not only because it takes place during a full moon, which if it's clear, you'll see tonight is going to be a full moon, but also because it's the quintessential time for romance. And also because of the historical custom of women gathering in Shiloh and Jerusalem and other cities to dance out in the open, out beneath the stars. And the women would say to all those people who were gathered, "Raise up your eyes and look, whom do you choose?" Think of it as an early version of J-Day. Judaism takes love pretty seriously. The Bible offers two compelling images of friendship, the first between Jonathan and David, and the other between Naomi and Ruth. The Song of Songs, which is another biblical book, it's an allegorical tale of romantic love and sexual love, and they include, among many other wonderful quotes, words that are spoken at many Jewish weddings, Ani ledodi v'dodi li, I am my beloved and my beloved is mine. And while platonic and romantic love are obviously quite different, they each, as Rabbi David Wolpe remarks, grow our hearts, because the more that we love and the more people that we love, the wider our circle becomes, and the more beautiful the filaments of life that run out into the world. It's a beautiful teaching. Love is what ties us together as couples, as families, as friends, and also as a community. Love gives us the strength that we need to move forward as we face life's challenges as well as its obstacles. A story about a dad and his kid illustrates this very well. So it's a story about the two of them, and there's a very heavy rock in front of them. And the son says to his father, "Dad, do you think I can move this rock?" The father replies, "Well, son, if you use all of your strength, I think you can move it." So the child pushes and he pushes, he's grunting, but the rock, of course, doesn't budge. It's huge. He then goes back to his father and he says, "Well, Dad, you're wrong. I can't move it." The father then looks lovingly at his son and says, "You know, I wasn't wrong. You didn't use all of your strength because you didn't ask me to help you out." Love gives us strength, and it's an essential part of being Jewish. From the earliest stories that we read in the book of Genesis, to the Exodus from Egypt, from all those years wandering in the Sinai desert, to the mitzvot, or sacred obligations, given at Sinai. All of these stories really just spell out the love between God and each of us. and they speak to the brit or partnership that all of us are in and that are necessary in every relationship. This partnership is also reflected in our prayer book. So right before we chanted the Shema and V'ahavta, we read this prayer, Ahavat Olam. It was on the big screen, which means God's love is eternal, it's everlasting, meaning it's endless in time and space. And what's very striking about this prayer is that it begins and it ends with a variation on the word ahava, love. Every prayer that we say, every mitzvah that we do, every interaction that we have with our spouse, with our kids, our grandkids, friends, coworkers, can be said and done with the intention of adding love to the world. And when we learn to love each other, that's how we learn to love God. So on this Shabbat of comfort, Nachamu, as we celebrate the holiday of love, Tu B'Av, on the 15th of the month, and remember the timeless wisdom of the Shema that God is one, may we find ourselves surrounded by love. And may we discover the hidden sparks of God that are truly present in relationships. And may we bring all of our heart, all of our mind, soul, and strength to the sacred encounters we experience each and every day. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to continue now with the concluding words of our service, beginning with the Aleinu, found on page 282. Please rise as the ark is opened.
Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula liyotzeh breshit, shelo asanu kegoyei haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpechot hadama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'goraleinu kechol hamonam, ve'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo
Free to be seated. And if you would, please turn to page 294. There you'll find the words of Kaddish Tome, the Mourner's Kaddish. As we call to mind and to heart members of our family and beyond who are no longer with us, first in the period of Shloshim, the first 30 days of mourning, we think of the following individuals: Ken Hoffman, friend of Tom and Dorsey Rose; David Curtis, husband of Carol Curtis; Bob Lapin, father of Andrew Lapin and Adrian Lapin; Jeff Garfield, husband of Betsy Garfield; Bill Groom, husband of Judy Groom; Rebecca Belkin Rosenstein, friend of Lynn Rosenthal; and Jean Patrick, mother of Sandra Plevin. To these names we also add and mark the yahrzeit, the anniversary of passing of loved ones on the Shabbat in years past. We think of Jesse Y. Arfa, Annie Becker, Sydney Brandeis, Sandra Brindis, Norton Chervitz, Joseph Cohn, Marjorie M. Cohn, Bernard Doff, Ann Dorfman, Morris A. Fischelow, Beatrice Galati, Leonard Goldman, Nolan Goldsmith, Betty Greiner, Marion Haber, Jerome Hirschman, Hanley M. Horwitz, Marshall Kent, Max Klein, Marvin Kramer, Janice Loeb, Lois Masarski, Gertrude Meza, Arnold Molish, Jean Orloff, Joseph Pascal, David Peskin, Solomon Post, Helene Roberts, Eugene Rothenberg, David Salton, Virginia Stevenson, William Stosser, Charlotte Van Ness, and Brett Wilson. Are there any other names to add for yahrzeit, the Shabbat, please? Thank you. Zichronam livracha, may the memories of all of these good people continue to be a blessing in our lives, the life of our community, as we rise to offer the words of Kaddish praise together. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, v'yalma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayedechol beit Yisrael, v'agalau v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mivarach le'alam ulalmei almaya, yitbarak v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudasha brichu, la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, ta'amiran b'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who causes peace in the heavens cause peace to descend on us, Israel, and the world, as we say, amen.
V'imru, 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 amen. V'imru, 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 amen.
Feel free to be seated. We'll continue with the Shabbos Kiddush in your prayer books, your Siddur. It's on page 5. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'yava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom tehillah l'mikra'e kodesh zecher letziat Mitzrayim ki banu b'charta v'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha b'yava uvratzon Himchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh Hashem. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Just a few brief announcements for this Shabbat. Many thanks to Michelle and Joy, and to our tech crew in the back for sharing beautiful music and allowing the technology to do its thing, both here in the sanctuary and for those of you watching at home. A couple important fundraisers are taking place right now. The Sisterhood's Honey fundraiser is taking place. Bring sweetness to the new year, 5782, by purchasing some delicious honey using the link found in the Happenings email that we send out every Tuesday. The Brotherhood has mailed a donation form for their Rosh Hashanah. They do great things for the temple, and let's support them. And then we'll receive a nice Rosh Hashanah card before the holiday. And Emerald Lagasse used to say, "Bam," and he used to say, I think he used to say, what was it? Let's take it up a notch. Well, due to the increasing cases of COVID, not only among the unvaccinated, but also among the vaccinated, we're going to take it down a notch, and we're going to discontinue, at least for the time being, the Oneg Shabbat, so it's a bummer, but safety first. And look for an email early next week, probably Monday. The reopening committee met last night. The recommendations are going through the Board of Trustees, and we'll be sending out an updated email regarding temple policies, including the importance of wearing a mask, even in the back. Thank you very much. Hate to be a stickler, but it's important. All right, and our closing song is going to be right there. Yihiyu L'Ratzon, may the words of our mouth. You can also find it on page 62, if you'd like, in the prayer book, Mishkan HaTefilah. Hope you enjoy it, and please sing along. Yihiyu L'Ratzon, Imrei fi, Egyon libi lefanecha. Yihiyu L'Ratzon, Imrei fi, Egyon libi lefanecha. Adonai Suri, Adonai Suri, Adonai Suri ve'goali. Adonai Suri, Adonai Suri, Adonai Suri ve'goali. Yihiyu L'Ratzon, Imrei fi, Egyon libi lefanecha. Yihiyu L'Ratzon, Imrei fi, Egyon libi lefanecha. Adonai Suri, Adonai Suri, Adonai Suri ve'goali. Adonai Suri, Adonai Suri, Adonai Suri ve'goali. And we'll conclude with a prayer for our health and well-being. not only for us, but for those around us and our community. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al shmirat hanefesh, for the mitzvah and sacred obligation to protect our lives and protect the lives of those around us. Shabbat shalom to each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being here in person and for joining at home until next week.